Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. For this tutorial, we've got a lot going on. I'm going to show you how to make candied glass pears and also how to make edible acetate or plastic. I will also show you how I make and use butter ganache and those little edible plastic flowers. So let's get right to it. First thing we need to do is to make our edible plastic or acetate, whatever you want to call it. We got to pick one. Let's call it edible plastic. So what I'm doing here is I'm using real acetate, non-edible acetate, and I cut it to the width of my pan, as wide as I could make it, and I'm using tape to actually just be kind of a barrier for when I make this plastic, because it's going to be in a liquid form at the beginning. So we need to kind of contain it a little bit. And I also use tape to stick it to the pan. Now, to make this, I'm going to put all the recipes in the video description, but basically I'm making a gelatin, a thicker gelatin with some food grade glycerin. I'm sorry. So basically you just make your normal gelatin. You can flavor it any way you want to. And then I added some food coloring to it. And then I'm adding about a teaspoon of the glycerin. The glycerin is going to just kind of give it a little bit of flexibility when it's dry, because we need it to be flexible to wrap around our cake. So basically you just melt it down and just spread it into the acetate. A thin piece. You don't want it to be too thick, otherwise it will never really dry. Like I said, all of the details will be in the video description. It's really hard to explain everything. There's a lot going on in this video. And I'm using a mandolin to make thinner pieces of my pears. These are just regular Bartlett pears. Ripe Bartlett, or slightly underripe Bartlett pears. And I'm making them about a quarter of an inch thickness. And then I am making basically a simple syrup is what this is. It's water and granulated sugar mixed together and then dissolved down. And this is how I'm going to cook my pears. Now, when you have all of your slices made and you have way more than you can deal with at a time, and you don't want them to turn brown, just get some water, cold water, and add a little bit of lemon juice in it, and that will keep your pears from browning on you. Now, I had a hard time with my little stovetop here. My burner, it did not want to get hot enough to really come to a rolling boil. So you would want it to come more to a boil, and it's just going to cook your pears faster. It took me a while to do this, but if you can get your heat up a little faster, it's going to happen faster. You want to cook these until they're almost translucent. You can see them on the side there. They're almost translucent. Take them out a little bit before that point. You can see a difference there, because as they sit, they're going to soak in some more of that simple syrup. Now, I patted them dry. Get as much of that moisture off as you can. And I just used some extra simple syrup that I had, and I added food coloring to it. And that's how I'm adding my color this time, because I wanted it to be a little bit more transparent. I've done another candied pear cake a couple of years ago, and those I made much more saturated. You can go back and see that video if you want to see the difference. But I wanted to have kind of a gradation of color. I wanted it to be kind of purple on the outside and then pink on the inside, because those are the colors that I'm using. I wanted this cake to be very vibrant, very colorful. So I'm just doing both sides, and then I put a silicone mat on the top, put the pan on there so that when they cook, they are staying flat. Remember, all the directions will be in the video description for much more detailed. Now, this has dried, and I had pulled it off of the sheet, and I just used a paper punch to make the flowers. I made more than I needed because I knew I was going to use some for the little added details. Now I'm just chopping up my chocolate. You want to make sure when you make a butter ganache, recipe will be in the video description, that you use a white chocolate, if you're doing the white chocolate version, that has cocoa butter in it. Use good quality chocolate or it's going to end up kind of grainy. And then I melt it down. I wanted it to be, if I didn't make it white to begin with, we wouldn't have the true colors of the purple and the pink. They'd be a little bit more muted, and I didn't want that. I want them to be true to color. So I add the white first. These are oil-based food colors. They're made, you can use them with chocolate. Don't use a gel or water-based because they will seize up. So I just color both of them. Get them to the depth that you want. Now I'll explain too, as you're watching me do this, that I did use for the acetate sheets, I used acetate, and I also used some plastic texture mats that I have to add some texture to the purple, because I did purple and pink of the edible acetate. Okay, so just keep that in mind. I didn't show you everything, but it's the same technique. And to do the chocolate or the butter ganache, I just kind of did piece of acetate around the cake that's already chilled, filled, crumb coated and chilled, and I put a little of the butter ganache around the bottom of that ring that you can see there to keep it in there. Let that chill, and then I pour the butter ganache over the top, try to tap it to remove extra air bubbles, put it in your freezer until it sets up. The bottom tier, I dyed the same color purple as the other purple tier. This is just buttercream on this one. Now all my tiers are going to be chilled in the freezer until I'm ready to work with them. I also do not show you the releasing of the acetate from the butter ganache. Just basically when it's set up, you just take that ring off and the acetate peels right off. So now I'm making basically the glass part of the pears. It's just, recipe will be in the description. It takes, I don't have enough time to tell you all the directions, but basically you just melt them all together, and then you take your pears that are, see how it's firm now. Once they're cooked very slowly in the oven on the lowest setting, they dry more firm. Now when I dip them into this, the glass part, they do kind of get a little more flexible, but they're going, trust me, they're going to firm up once the glass cools and dries on these. So I just did this to all of them. Be very careful because that's very, very hot. It's almost like an isomalt in the temperature and what it's doing. So be very careful while you're doing those. Now we're just assembling our cake. We're using dowels cut to the same size in between each tier. A little bit of buttercream to get them to stick to each other. Filled in the little gaps, and now I'm taking, these are the pieces that I did on a textured mat. You can kind of see the pattern on there. That was an experiment, and it turned out really well. The way I'm getting these to stick to the butter ganache is just with some piping gel. I tried it with buttercream or with more butter ganache, but it didn't want to stick to the edible acetate. So piping gel, and use pins and to keep them stuck together while they set up. If you put it in the refrigerator for a little while, it's going to stick to itself and it's going to be fine. Now I'm adding the pears to the cake with some buttercream, and I just line them up alternating. Like you have the first row on the top, and then the ones below there set in between them, and then the one at the bottom row, they set in between the middle row. And I decided that I wanted to add some gold to that middle tier. So I started by just using my finger, a clean, dry finger, with just some of the gold luster dust and just kind of touching the raised surface. But then I decided that I wanted it to be a little bit brighter. So I went back with my paint, the gold paint, which is the gold luster dust mixed with the Everclear, and a fan brush. And I'm just kind of touching the raised parts with my brush held very, far to the side. Now, if you do this and it does get on other parts of your edible acetate, don't worry about it. Just use a brush dipped in some Everclear, and it very easily just wipes up. It doesn't affect the acetate whatsoever. So I did go back in and do that. I didn't add any gold to the top. I thought that was going to be... Actually, I take that back. The little flowers I did kind of edge in gold. You can see it there. I'm sorry. I realized it as I was saying it that I did do that. And I attached those with some more piping gel. So here's our finished product. Don't forget to take those pins out. after it is set up and all ready to go. And I hope you liked it. This is something new and something different. Hope you give it a try. And I hope you got something that you can use. And thank you for watching.